Hello everyone and welcome back yet again to another edition of the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast, brought to you as always by the GSMC Sports Network. My name is Christopher Shepard. Thank you guys yet again for tuning in. Today we have a fantastic show. We are continuing our player profiles, a lot of wide receivers, a very wide receiver heavy show today. But our first segment actually will be in the realm of fantasy hockey, as you know. As well as basketball, there's a lot of off-season trades and acquisitions going on in the world of hockey. And I'll be discussing how those trades initially impact each team that respective player has been traded to and how it impacts the fantasy hockey landscape for you guys as well. But before we get into any of that enthralling content, I want to remind you guys yet again to like, follow, and subscribe to the show and the network as a whole. It is a huge support to everyone involved and is greatly appreciated. Also, we do receive a ton of tips and donations, so if you do feel so inclined, please leave them at the link gsmc.cloud. It is a huge support to both me, my fellow podcasters, and ultimately the network as a whole, so anything you leave is greatly appreciated. Also, if you have any burning questions, comments, or concerns considering all of my prior segments and even one for today's show, you can leave them at the link as well, and I will address them at the beginning of the next episode. But without further ado, let's jump right into today's show. Starting off in the realm of fantasy hockey, like I said, a lot of trades going down, a lot of acquisitions, interesting pickups that will really bolster these teams. A lot of teams that are kind of on the margins of whether or not they're true playoff or Stanley Cup contenders, making moves that they believe will bolster their squad and potentially give you some idea of what you want to do with your fantasy team come the 24-25 NHL season. So without further ado, let's jump right into this segment. So what interesting me about the hockey trades and acquisitions landscape this offseason is specifically guys who are reaching kind of the peaks or ends of their respective careers, making interesting moves to different teams that have different paths to becoming Stanley Cup contenders and also becoming, kind of contenders for the playoffs as well, because there are some teams still not there yet based off these trades, but they definitely do look a lot better. And I want to start off with the Nashville Predators, obviously a team that's always searching to better themselves, kind of in that middle tier in the Western Conference, looking to break through yet again, trying to keep up with the crowded Western Conference as it gets better and better. So what do? They go out and add veteran Steven Stamkos, formerly of the Tampa Bay Lightning, a fantastic player, in my humble opinion, a first ballot Hall of Famer, and Jonathan Marchessault, another outstanding player from Vegas, has been there, done that, brings experience and intelligence from his runs to the Stanley Cup Finals with Vegas, also a Conn Smythe Trophy MVP. And so these are two guys who I believe will add that depth and experience to the Nashville Predators, and in terms of fantasy, perhaps elevate their production, also help you decide whether or not you want someone else on the Nashville Predators due to the fact that both of these guys can produce assists and goals in bunches. It also calls into question what Andrew Brunette, the coach of the Nashville Predators, is going to do with the rest of his lineup. You have guys like Philip Forsberg, Ryan O'Reilly, Gustav Nyquist, outstanding players at every level of this team. But I do feel like Steven Stamkos immediately steps into at least the second line as the left winger there, while Marchessault will step in on the right wing. They're definitely guys who you want at the top end of your rotation, perhaps not top 6 players still, but they certainly have the potential to add that depth in the middle lines where you definitely want that consistency from your top 6 to carry over to that line's play. And so I do believe that it definitely opens a lot of doors for how Nashville wants to play this because of the fact that they're beginning to get more depth at all these positions. And I think the bottom line is Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault are solid options. I don't believe that they're still the guys they were in the prime of their careers. Perhaps Jonathan Marchessault still has something in him. He's a bit more in his prime, but Steven Stamkos certainly is one of those guys who's slowly entering the end of his career, the ending stages of his career at the very least. But he still is a good point scorer. That's what I love about Steven Stamkos. He stresses the fact that he wants points. He's someone who is always searching for not just a goal but an assist in every single game that he plays. And in a Nashville team that's really looking for someone to be a focal point of their offensive mindset, because when I think of the Nashville Predators, I think of them as a more defensive squad. I certainly feel like Steven Stamkos is the guy, and Jonathan Marchessault is too. And so I definitely feel like the way that Andrew Brunette shakes up these lines will determine how good of a fantasy season each and every single one of the Nashville Predators will have. I still believe the defense will be solid, but guys like Forsberg, O'Reilly, even guys like Colton Sissons and Tommy Novak, who are kind of in their fresh new lines, I kind of feel like they will determine how well the Nashville Predators gel as a team and whether or not you can trust them, or any of the players for that matter, to be on that team. Going next to Jake Guentzel. Jake Guentzel, also someone who's kind of in the prime of his career, made a couple of deep playoff runs with the Penguins, kind of got mixed around the tosser a little bit, but now ends up with the Lightning. I think it's a great acquisition for them, perhaps potentially the best fantasy acquisition by any team, because of the fact Guentzel is also kind of like in the mold of Stamkos. He's kind of Stamkos 2.0, so to speak, now that he's on Tampa Bay. And coming over from the Carolina Hurricanes, where he also had a couple of deep playoff runs, what I love about Jake Guentzel, he really never is the true focal point of what an offensive attack looks like. But he is definitely someone who everything kind of revolves around, if that makes sense. He's a massive presence in terms of the face-off. He's a massive presence in terms of the power play. He's going to pair very well with the Lightning Stars. And in Nikita Kucherov and Braden Point, you have two guys who can carry the goal-scoring load for you in your top six. And Jake Guentzel is just going to distribute the puck. That's what I love about Jake Guentzel. He's not going to be that goal-scoring threat for you, whether you start him in your lineup or put him on the bench as an option off there. He is going to be someone who can get you the assist. He's always going to have a good plus-minus as well in terms of the power play. And so, just looking at that trio, the Lightning as a team should be very happy with that, because now that they're no longer the cream of the crop, they're no longer this dynasty that came out of nowhere and truly built through every level of their team, and they're now a team that's kind of looking to get a bit younger, but still building around the core they have. This acquisition seems like a very, very smart one, an astute one, and it could be a very pivotal one for your fantasy team. Should you decide to draft Jake Guentzel, I see him as kind of a mid-round pick, let's say 3rd to 5th round pick in many fantasy hockey drafts, in an 8-round draft especially. I definitely feel like he's a guy who adds more bang for your buck at that position. And so Jake Guentzel moving to the Lightning just feels like something that should pique your interest if you're also a fantasy hockey fan. But the last acquisition I kind of want to talk about, and the one that's kind of going under the radar because it's not necessarily someone moving to a new home, but someone staying exactly where he is. I bet you guys do not want to hear this guy's name right now because I talk about him a lot on this show. But Sam Reinhart remaining with the Florida Panthers, wanting to run it back with this current squad that they have, shows the fact that Sam Reinhart is one of those players who just has a desire to win cups and also be one of those catalysts who people see as an unsung hero of their team. They look to Sam Reinhart and they say, this guy really helped my fantasy team. And so him staying with the Panthers could have been the best choice he's made in his career to date. And so looking at what he brings to the Panthers, obviously the Florida Panthers are built so well that they don't necessarily need a star. But if any one player were to be called the star on this team based off of last season, it would be Sam Reinhart. So versatile, fantastic in every facet of the game, led the league in goals last year with 57. Top 20 skater at the minimum. He remains in the top line with Alexander Barkov. That pairing is going to be very scary because Barkov is also another creator of high danger chances. and they're going to be in lockstep with each other for years to come. And I'm so glad that we get to see Sam Reinhart stay on a team that values him at a high level. Because if Sam Reinhart left, I really don't know if he would have retained that level of production he is known for, because of the fact that in a Florida Panthers system that revolves around a team identity, distributing the puck, finding ways to get to the net, Sam Reinhart is one of the most valuable players, and I'm so happy that the Panthers put a premium on him as the player they wanted to build this roster around, because of the fact there's no one quite like him in the NHL. There's no player quite like Sam Reinhart, and I mean it sincerely, because he's unselfish and selfish at the same time. He knows what his team needs, but he also knows that he can go get it himself. We saw it in the postseason, the Stanley Cup Finals. He's so solid in the power play as well. So many power play goals in that postseason run. And ultimately, I'm excited and intrigued to see what he can do next year, because he is going to be a star in this league, even though no one truly likes to say it that much. But overall, these three moves really show how the needle moves in terms of offseason trades. You're either a team who's looking for a piece that could take you over the edge and get to the playoffs, or a team that's focused on building with what you have. And especially looking at the Reinhart deal, I think that the NHL landscape right now is more built around team identity than everything. You still have generational superstars, but I feel like you want to find the next guy that can really propel you. In order to do that, you have to kind of look at different pathways to do that, and Stamkos and Gensel trades certainly feel like that. But overall, these three things that happened in the offseason in fantasy hockey terms are major, and I just wanted to present them to you guys. But that will just about do it for this segment. Coming next, we start our wide receiver player profiles for the day, starting off with a guy who is the picture of consistency in terms of the wide receiver position. Tune in to find out who that is after the break on the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.